Speak Spanish. I speak a little bit. I know enough to get me by. I could be better. I would love to get better at Spanish. But, you know, maybe one day I'll sit down and take the time to really learn. Maybe spend some time in South America. I'll probably learn pretty quick. So, let's see. What? One second. Trying to get some good questions here. Thoughts on the new Patek Philippe Nautilus 5711 olive green dial? That watch, I cannot wait to see one in person. Based on the pictures, they look incredible, but you guys know a watch in the pictures is never the same as the watch in real life. There's so many watches out there, they look incredible in pictures, and you get them in your hands, and it's like, nah, doesn't do it. And then there's the opposite. You see watches and pictures, and you're like, and you see it in person, it's like, oh my God, what is this? This is incredible. Like, I'm swinging that watch is probably gonna, you know, really look amazing in person. I think steel and green just look incredible. I think it'll do really well. I'm curious to what the actual prices of that watch is gonna fall under. I'm guessing 200 plus. Let's see, 16520 or 116500. I'm sure you guys know it's an easy one. 16520 for me. I absolutely love Zenith Daytonas. I don't care for the newer style Daytonas. I would never wear a Panda. I would wear the all black one. I think the solid black 116-500 is an incredible reference. I think it looks amazing. That's the only modern Daytona I would wear, besides the Paul Newman Oyster Flex. I'm after one of those. Let's see. Okay. What are your top 3 favorite watches? I'll do modern, neo, vintage, and vintage. My favorite modern watch at the time, like I just said, it's going to be the 16508 Paul Newman. I'm sorry, 18 Paul Newman Oyster Flex. I think that watch is just pure sexy. I would love to own one. I've owned one before, but sadly had to sell it. My favorite 90s watch, probably going to be a Zenith Daytona black dial, and then the vintage Paul Newman, obviously. Let's see. All right. Okay, Murad95SS on Instagram, you asked, how do you have so much knowledge on watches? Is it experience or courses? It's definitely experience for me. I've never taken watch courses. I had a lot of time when I was valeting cars to, you know, a lot of free time during the slow time. So what I would do is I'd pop my phone open. I would just go after all the watch forums. I would read Rolex forums, vintage Rolex forums, and various other forums that I found online. And I would just soak in all these posts, because all these posts were that were on these forums had so much information and so many people battling each other. What was right, what's not right. And you can obviously you can take what you want from it when you're reading these forums and kind of create your own opinion, your own bias. And I think if you're looking to really build your knowledge on Rolexes, definitely pick up some Mondani books, pick up some watch forums, definitely ask questions on watch forums. That's what I did. I always posted questions every day on certain forums, and it's like, you know, and people would jump on there and explain stuff, and it was really, really cool. And since then, I've just kind of gravitated towards my own knowledge of what I picked up off of that. Let's see. Guys, I'd love to talk more about A-Link. I just don't know enough of that brand to really, you know, to be knowledgeable enough to sound like I know what I'm talking about. Ever owned a milsub 5517? No, I've never even seen one in my hands, unfortunately. I've seen pictures, and those things are nuts. Those, I mean, I don't know what they're trading at right now. I'm sure they're over, 150,000. Let's see. All right. What was your first job? My first job was at Taco Cabana. I was pressing the, actually no, I take that back. That was not my first job. It was actually at a burger place called Ball's Burgers in Highland Park. That was my first job, and I just basically worked the cashier and did my thing there and went home. It was kind of a cool job. Let's see. Did you start out doing wholesale or retail? This is a very, very good question. I started out doing wholesale. The reason being is my first connections were with wholesalers, and those guys actually taught me a lot about the business before I knew anything else. So I relied on them to help me buy and help me sell watches. I would call them like every day asking, hey, what can I pay for a sub? What can I pay for this Datejust? They would always tell me, hey, buy it at this price, I'll pay you this, I'll make you this much profit. And that relationship lasted for the first 2, 3, 4 years until I kind of just broke out on my own and went full-time from there. Any advice for getting into vintage Rolex? Guys, if you're going to get into vintage Rolex, like I said before, dive into those forums, read and read, soak up as much knowledge as you can from those guys, because those guys on those vintage Rolex forums, they know a thing or two. Definitely pay attention to pictures and definitely understand the different mark dials. That's the biggest thing to learn. This is the difference between a Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3 red sub dials, for example, GMT. Understand those dial eras, and that alone will put you way further ahead of most guys, because if you're able to spot a dial and tell you, and you can tell somebody what year it is, that's incredible stuff. Let's see here. Why the Breitling hate? Guys, I think Breitling has a great history and a great story, but what I hate about Breitling is the mass-produced movements they're using, and they don't really, I mean, now it's better, they have some in-house stuff, but before that, it was just mass-producing 7750 movements, and they're just coming up with these new models every week. It seems like they're pumping out different models, and it's just not for me. Alrighty. Oh, there's some good. How do I do it? How can you get into wholesaling with just 20 grand? Again, you can start, depending on you, you can start any business with any amount of money if you know what you're doing. So with 20 grand, I would suggest you guys start buying, obviously, as many watches as you can with it. So I would stick to the $1,500 to $2,500 range. Buy up a bunch of Tudors, maybe some older Rolexes, some older Datejusts, and try to. I would rather have volume in the beginning than some fewer pieces, because with volume you guys can go after clients, and if you put up 6, 7, 8 watches, it's a numbers game. 2, 3 people are going to come after you and buy something. So play on those numbers. Let's see. The first lesson I learned in the watch business. This is a good question, guy. I was very naive in the watch business when I first got into it. I've gotten robbed a few times, and the biggest thing I learned was not to be so trusting and really start to look at people and really pay attention to how people talk to you, because the biggest thing that was the biggest red flag for me growing into the business was when people came off Craigslist and they wanted to have this big story as to why they're buying the watch, and there was this over explanation of what they were doing. That was always a red flag. That kind of just means they're trying to butter you up and kind of put you together, and that right there, every time I got burned, it was the same story. I'm buying this watch for somebody, or I'm selling this watch because I have this bills and blah, blah, blah. And they would just go on and on and on about it, and they just want to keep you hooked. And that right there is always a red flag. If anybody ever is selling something and they're over explaining it, run away, guys. It's always, always, always a red flag. What was the first ever watch you fell in love with? I answered this earlier. I believe it was a red sub.
Yes.
Let's see. Thoughts on the current?
Nope. Can you check the...
How do you learn about the watch's mechanism? Again, this is something you guys want to train your eye on. You definitely want to go on Google, research fake movements, and then research the real movements, and try to sit there and spot the differences, because there are differences. I do have a few videos on our YouTube channel showing you guys the difference between fake 3135s and real 3135s, and definitely take the time on Google and really research what you're looking at. There's tons and tons of images of fake Patek movements and real Patek movements, and you can start seeing the finesse of the real watch and the cheapness of the fake one. So let's see. 100 grand to buy 3 to 4 watches. This is a good question. I would probably buy with 100 grand, I would spend 30 of it on a black ceramic Daytona, probably spend another 20 to 25 on a blue sky. I would buy new stuff, because if you got 100 grand, I wouldn't go into vintage just because most likely the average consumer with 100 grand doesn't know what they're doing with vintage watches. I would say get new stuff, because they're just trending up so much. So I would probably buy Daytona, Blue Sky, Pepsi, and a black sub. That's probably around 100 grand. And let's see. You think the Equinox to be discontinued soon? I don't think so. I think that watch, the Equinox, are bread and butter for Patek. I think they're just going to keep improving on them. They might discontinue a model here and there, but I don't think they'll ever discontinue the whole lineup. Where does the Rootbeer go short long term? I think they go short in a different way. I think they go short with, and they need to do this. I think Rolex needs to bring back the brown dial Rootbeer. That watch would be so amazing with the ceramic configuration and the bigger case, with the new updated bracelet. And I hope they bring that dial back. That would be so amazing. Let's see. Hold on 1 second, guys. Okay, hold on a second. Are you a watchmaker, and have I taken any watchmaking course? Funny story. So when I first got into the business, I actually wanted to be a watchmaker. I didn't actually have interest in selling watches. I had more interest in putting them together. So I ended up buying a few hyperchrome fakes that I was tearing apart and putting back together over and over to see if I could do it. It was just too frustrating. I didn't really care. At the end of the day, I was like, nah, I think I can make more money, selling watches than messing with watches. I did, ended up working on a few real watches that I figured out how to change dials, change bezels. And to this day, I can do some basic stuff, but I would never dive into the movement. I can change a crystal, I can change a bezel, I can change a dial, hands, a crown. But if you ask me to change a mainspring on a watch, I'm going to run away. Have I ever had a double red? I've had a few, and I wish I held on to a few of those. 2 years ago, I bought a Tropic double red for, I want to say $65,000. In today's market, that watch is around $150. There was a Tropic double red at the show in Miami. If you guys go watch my video where we go to IWJG, you'll see it. Complete box set. The dial was phenomenal. That watch was, they were asking $190. That watch was insane.
Look at this whenever you just go through the pictures.
What's this?
Like new old stock, bro.
Oh, new old stock. Is that a red seedwell?
Yeah.
Oh no, that's a red sub. Oh wow, I wouldn't call that new old stock.
That's what he said. So
I mean,
he
there's
just
a
said
D. All right, sorry guys. Somebody just messaged me, and apparently a new old stock red sub. So I'm determining if it is new old stock. It's hard to tell, man.
When he sent it to me last night, I was like, oh shit. Let me just fucking.
I mean, don't get me wrong. It's an insane condition.
Yeah. Look at the bezel and everything too.
Well, see, I don't. If it's new old stock, how is the bezel so beat up?
But like the dial is perfect too.
You know what? I bet you it's a recut case.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I wouldn't trust it. I don't think this is new old stock. I think what this is a recut case, which is common on vintage watches. That's another good topic right there. Recut cases, guys. A lot of people from that have older subs will actually send their cases off to people like LA Watchworks, and what they'll do is they'll have them completely redo the whole case where it looks NOS. They'll keep the chamfers on there. The original grain looks perfect and everything else, and then people will run around and say, "Oh, that's new old stock." Now. Looks like it's just been recut. Best way to buy your first watch. Depending on what you want to do. The best way to buy your first watch depends how you want to do it. Do you if you want, for example, you want a Pepsi, you don't want to mess with the 80s and having to buy those Datejust and having to buy those heavy hitter pieces in hopes they give you one, I would say just pay the gray market prices. I mean, you're still going to have value there. So if you're paying 22 grand for the watch, it's not like you're going to sell it for less than 13 or less than whatever. That watch is always going to go up in value from that gray market price. So is it really worth messing with the 80s to get the one watch you want? No, absolutely not. Just go gray market, get it over with. Because playing that 80 game, it's obviously very sketchy, because at the end of the day, if you get caught flipping watches, you're done, and then everything you've spent with them goes out the window. Let's see. Can people buy a watch with cash up to how much? Love you guys' work. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yes, you can buy as much. You can buy and spend as much cash as you want. We don't really like cash. We prefer wires. But If you do come into my store with cash, we're going to make you fill out an 8300 form if it's over 10,000, which is what we're required to do. Anything under 10,000, then you're okay. We can take cash as a payment. Is it hard right now? Let's see. What is the price in the market of a Zenith Daytona A serial 1999? 1999 is right around the last year. There's a few that I've seen posted recently. It looks like the Zenith Daytonas and the A and P, well, not P, but A serials are going for around 38,000. P serial Zenith Daytonas, if you ever see one of those on the market, expect a crazy asking price because it's the final year, and P serial is extremely rare. I believe the last one I saw was sold around 65,000. So let's see. Do you think 116610 black subs will be special in 20 years? Yes and no. I think they'll hold their own, but I don't think they'll be really special. Those, you got to remember, guys, Rolex has been pumping out far more watches in the 2000 eras than they are in, say, in the 70s and 80s. They're producing far more ceramic subs than they produced red subs and so on, to meet demand, obviously. And wear an OP. Would you buy and wear an OP41? I would. I would buy the red dial or the Tiffany blue. I think those watches are incredible. I would love to own one. I just haven't come around to buy one. I'm not sure if I ever will, but I would buy one, yes. Let's see. That's all right, let's see. I'm trying to see what you guys. Best investment watch under 20 grand. I'm going to go with a Batman. I think the Batmans are going to just keep going up. I mean, those watches are overlooked compared to the Pepsis. It's the black and blue bezel that does it for me. I mean, I really love the Jubilee over the Oyster for some reason. It just looks better. It's a really cool presence. Let's see. I'm going to move on. Okay. If you could only wear one watch forever, what is it? Good question. I think I'm going to go with a Paul Newman. I would wear a Paul Newman until that thing ran into the ground. How long did it take you to get educated enough before starting your watch business? That's a very good question. I definitely did a ton of reading and a ton of spying on other dealers and seeing how they were working. So I would say roughly 2 years before I got comfortable out there with my own money. So, but in this day and age with information, you could do it a lot faster. But back then when I started, there wasn't as much info on watches as there is now. All right, let's see. Is it worth buying a Rolex or Breitling? I'm going to obviously go with Rolex. It's far better to invest in Rolex than it is, investing in Breitling. I don't even know how you invest in Breitling. There are guys that specialize in buying Breitling. They know what they're doing, and I'm sure they don't hold anything. They're flippers, and they just get in and out of them, make their profit, and run. With Rolexes, at least you can hold them and be safe. This is a really good question. I saw this question earlier. If you weren't in the watch business, what would you do? Before I was in the watch business, I had a few ventures. If I wasn't in the watch business today, I most likely would be in real estate because I have family that have the real estate background. So I think I would have tried to target that, which I did try to go through real estate school, and I couldn't do it. It was overwhelming with the amount of paperwork every time you sold a house. It's just like, I was overwhelmed. I was like, no, forget it. I'd rather sell watches and just stick to doing that. What do you look for in a good salesman? This is a very good question. I look for follow-up. I look for, how they conversate with the clients. And if they ever get impatient, that's not a good thing. So I look for patience, integrity. I mean, if they keep up their word. I have a great sales team right now, and I absolutely love every one of them, and they're killing it right now. So, and I listen to what they're talking about when they have clients on the phone, and these guys they're saying the right things, they're doing the right things, they're following up, they're paying attention to the client's needs, and that's the biggest thing. Here's another question. Is vintage for everyone? It seems to come in phases for me. What keeps you committed? What keeps me committed to the vintage watches is obviously my passion for vintage watches. I mean, I am not so much into the vintage business these days. I'm actually moved over into more as a collector. So most of the vintage pieces you'll see in my store are my personal pieces. I am not looking to sell those. The vintage market does come in phases. It's not steady whatsoever. And it seems like people are gravitating towards better pieces, meaning like quality. Like back in the day, you could buy a GMT with a decent dial in hands, but now if you have ones in today's market, it's going to be much tougher to sell. Because I think there's just a lot more money circulating, so people would just rather have that mint condition GMT with box and papers and they'd rather spend $7-8 grand more to get that than to settle with something that's beat up, used, and looks okay, you know. So it's kind of a weird market for vintage right now. Let's see, moving on. Omega or Grand Seiko? Oof. I'm going with Omega on this one. I actually do like the Speedmasters. If I wasn't wearing a Rolex Daytona, I would go after a vintage Omega Speedmaster. I think those are very, very pretty watches. What is a brand new Pepsi going for complete these days? They are. We have one available, 22,000 full tape, or did we sell that?
22.5.
Oh, it's 22.5. My sales guy corrected me. Well, I'll do 22,000 for you guys today. If anybody wants a fully stickered Pepsi, brand new, 22, grab it. I'll show you guys. Hold on 1 second. All right.
You got it?
No, 1 second.
22,000, guys.
Oh, really?
If you want it, PM me after this, and we'll close this up. It even has the barcode. So here you go. How much can I find a whole complete set? They're trading right now 17, 18,000. Just depends. I mean, you can go up to 20 for really, really nice later years. Maybe a green card. What is the Rolex you would build a collection with under 10 grand? That's a good question. If I was going to spend under 10 grand for a Rolex, I would be chasing the 16.610s, the 16.710s naked. I mean, you know.
Can we get them for retail?
What?
The question?
No, is it what is the Rolex you would build a collection?
Oh, okay. Because if you can get them for retail, that's Tiffany.
Oh, right. Yeah. If you could buy any watch at retail and collect it, I would get a Tiffany under 10 grand. Those are absolutely insane. Let's see here, guys. Let's see. Okay, here's a question. Was the Coke GMT Tiffany stamped or just the Pepsi? I had 2 Tiffany stamped GMTs. I ended up selling one because I wasn't getting a lot of joy actually out of owning multiples of the same watch. I mean, I know they were different in their own ways. One was a matte dial 16750 Tiffany, which I still have, and the other one was a 16710 Tiffany. I decided to sell it because, you know, it's just like, I'm looking at 2 GMTs that are both Tiffany stamped. That's great, but I've since put the money into better watches for myself. Any micro brands you really like? What is considered micro brands these days?
Movement.
Hmm?
That MVMT.
Oh, Movement? Yeah, I guess those are good. What else would you say? I don't really know. I haven't been following.
Nixon, maybe.
Nixon's make good watches. There's another one. They look like Pateks.
Oh,
What are they?
oh, there's like one that I've been seeing like on ads for. It's like RP. It's like
RP.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's fine. They look just like Patek though.
Do you think the OPs will continue to climb? I'm gonna say yes, man. With this market the way it is, everything keeps climbing, and I just don't know when it's gonna stop climbing. I mean, I'm guessing the housing market's going to have to crash before these watches stop climbing. But when that happens, I think the watch prices will hold. Believe it or not, I don't think they'll crash either. I think they'll hold when the housing market crashes. So we'll see. Let's see here. Does polishing take a lot out of the value of platinum or gold watches? Not really. A good polishing guy is going to be able to, he's going to be able to keep that watch in great shape and keep the polishing where it needs to be. I don't think it also going to come down to the quality of the guy polishing your watches at the end. It doesn't matter if it's gold, platinum, steel, whatever. If you have a shitty polishing guy, be prepared to see very inconsistent work. Who's a better salesperson, yourself or Anthony? In my opinion, you both are great. Guys, Anthony and I have our roles in this business that we are not competing with each other. The team that we have in place does great as a unit. I mean, my biggest strength is buying. Anthony's biggest strength is selling, and everybody else's biggest strength is keeping everything together. So there's no real answer to that question other than, this is a big team effort. Let's see. Describe the best fake Daytona you've ever encountered. Oh, this is a good one. There's a Daytona a buddy of mine bought out in New York and shipped it my way, and he wanted me to see if it was real. So this was one of the latest, I guess they call it the noob factories. Those guys are out there producing some insane fakes. But a guy got burned in New York with one that actually had a real dial, real bezel, real hands. I mean, it was a Franken watch. So in the photos, it looked right. I was like, well, I need to see it. He was saying, somebody said the movement wasn't right. So I was like, well, send it my way. I'll take a look. And sure enough, the watch was a fake. It just had all these real parts on it. So I was like, mind-bending to see that. Any plans to increase the vintage offerings at the Timepiece, gentlemen? Yeah, I believe we will start offering a few more vintage pieces, but over time. I mean, guys, like I said, the market right now, it's a lot tougher to move vintage pieces unless you're focused on it. If that's your main bread and butter, then that's what you should build up on. But for us, new watches are the bread and butter for us. Vintage pieces, we mostly do on request. So if you ever need something, I'll try to find it for you. I've got the connections for vintage watches. I know most of the vintage guys around in the United States, and most of those guys are solid. So if I can't find it, I'll recommend you those guys. Let's see here. Do you collect guns? Yes, I do have a gun collection, and I'm part of an FFL with a friend of mine. So we've got all the fun stuff, the suppressors, full auto, SBRs. Is it possible to sell a watch from a Rolex 80 without getting blacklisted? No. If they catch you selling watches, you're done. You're going to get blacklisted. There's no way around it. They're not taking chances with people these days. So, if you're going to flip watches from your 80s, don't get caught doing it. How did I meet Anthony? We met in a group chat back in 2018, and I sold him a watch. He gave me his address to ship it to, and I said, yo, your address is 10 minutes down the road. I'll just bring it to you. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. So we met at a Starbucks, did a deal, and then we did a few more deals, and then realized he had something that I was trying to build up on, and I had something he wanted to build up on. So we just said, hey, let's just do a partnership and see how it goes. And it's been great ever since. 5970 for sale? No. The 5970, is it for sale? I could sell it. If you're really serious about it, Ricky, message me. I'll shoot you some pictures. I bought it for myself, but hey, everything's for sale at the right price. Let's see here, guys. Where do I see Jumbo 15202 prices going over the next year? Definitely over six figures. I think that watch is going to creep up to the 100, 120, maybe $140,000 range in a year from now. I mean, if the market keeps doing what it's doing, the sky's the limit. What is the sorry, every time people call me, it pauses my life. It's kind of annoying. What is the process to send in a Rolex consigned? If anybody has a watch they'd like to consign with me, we would send you a consignment agreement form. Basically spells out we have 30 days, X percentage of the sale price, and then once we receive the watch, we protect it with plastic wrap and so forth, so it doesn't get scratched up and banged and so forth. And when it sells, you get paid immediately once we get the funds. So pretty simple process. We do it all the time. Never had any issues. Let's see here. I think I already answered these. Why do you prefer vintage over modern? I don't know. I guess those vintage watches for me are the original watches. Like that's what started everything. And for me, that's what I love about vintage watches. I mean, they are the OGs in the lineup. Like 1680 red sub inspired everything you see today on a Rolex. Paul Newman's inspired everything you see on modern Daytonas. You see a lot of heritage. So that I am a purist and a form when it comes to cars and guns and so forth. I like the original stuff better. It's just where I gravitate. Okay, this is a good question. Are older 16233s good to flip? Yes, I still think you can buy those watches right and sell them. The average price for a 16233 the last few years was like $2,000 to $2,500. Now they're at like $45,000 to $55,000, and they keep creeping up. But I still think you can buy those right from the public. Typically, we get them. On walk-ins, we're paying $35,000 to $4,000, flipping them for $45,000 to $5,000, and they're still abundantly available to out there. So if you can find those watches and you're getting into the business, start with Datejust. Those are the perfect watch to master and get into. Do you guys? This is a good question. Do you guys keep an eye on auction houses for watches? I'm actually going to be looking at an auction for the first. I'll be bidding on watches, and hopefully we'll see how it goes. And it'll be my first auction, so I'll let you guys know. Maybe that'll be on the next YouTube video. Let's see if we can. 15,400 price predictions. I think those watches are going to keep climbing, but it'll be a slow climb. I say by next year they'll probably go up another 15-20% if everything keeps going the way it's going. So who knows? We'll see. Here's a good question. Do you carry protection when carrying watches? Yes, we all conceal carry here. Everybody minus Anthony and a few others have guns on them. I carry one, Alfred carries one, and so forth. So, okay, it is 1:30. Guys, I gotta cut it short. I gotta go look at some property. So, hey, thank you guys so much. I hate to cut this abruptly, but I ran out of time.